again, everyone. Welcome to the 79th episode of the Cotton Companion podcast. I'm Jim Steadman, Senior Editor of Cotton Grower, and as always, I'm joined by Cotton Grower Editor Frank Giles. Frank, it's been a lovely Labor Day weekend here in the Mid-South. How did things go in the Southeast?
Well, it was hot and humid, and as tends to be the case this time of year. But it was a nice long weekend, and by and large, the weather was pretty good here. Some pop-up showers, as is the norm in Florida. And of course, we'll be talking a lot more about weather here in a little bit as a little sneak peek to our special guest this weekend.
Yes, and that's one of the reasons I was asking about the weather, because we do have something totally different and special today. Joining us shortly in our virtual studio will be Mike Boylan, who's better known to farmers and other weather watchers as the man behind Mike's Weather page that you can find online and certainly on Facebook and other social media. Frank, what are we going to be talking with Mike about?
Well, just going to talk to him about how SpaghettiModels.com, that is his website, and Mike's Weather page on Facebook came about, just the history of that story, how it's evolved over time, and talk a little bit about a busy 2020 hurricane season that seems to be getting a lot busier here in the next couple of weeks, probably.
Well, this is going to be fun. It's going to be a different type of interview for us, and hopefully something our listeners are really going to enjoy. But before we get started on that, let's break away and hear a short message from our sponsor, Phytogen.
Phytogen is pleased to sponsor the Cotton Companion, bringing you the latest news to help you thrive all season long.
Thanks, as always, to the folks at Phytogen for sponsoring the Cotton Companion podcast. And now let's take a few minutes and turn things over to our colleague, Robin Sickberg, for a custom content interview with Dr. Brad Hopkins, who's Phytogen Cotton Development Specialist in Central and South Texas.
Hello, I'm Robin Sickberg, Custom Content Editor for Meister Media Worldwide, publisher of Cotton Grower Magazine. My guest today is Dr. Brad Hopkins, Phytogen Cotton Development Specialist in Central and South Texas. So welcome to the program, Brad.
Hi, Robin. Thanks for having me.
Well, I know the 2020 cotton harvest is in full swing in your territory. So can you give us an update of what kind of season you're seeing in your area and how's harvest going?
Man, it's hard to believe how fast things have gone. And, you know, to be honest, the harvest season is just about wrapped up. We've still got a few farms that need to get harvested here, but by and large, the majority has come out already. You start first down south. You know, really, we had a pretty good growing season this year. Those guys in the valley had a lot of acres that got droughted out early on, which was tough. They really needed some rain down there. And then the guys that were able to get a crop together, you know, Phytogen 400 was looking really promising. The little bit of dryland stuff we had come out, yielding really well, had really high quality. And then Hurricane Hannah hit, you know, so we really lost the majority of the cotton acres down there. I really feel for those guys. Definitely been a tough year, but I'm excited about next year. I think 400 is going to be a really nice option for them.
Yeah, it's been pretty tough down in the valley, and cotton growers are nothing if not resilient, and definitely they've had their challenges this year, which has been pretty tough. So I'm glad that there's a variety there that might look pretty good for the future. What about the Texas coastal bend season?
The coastal bend area, some of them got planted early, and they ended up pretty dry as well. And a lot of acres went in right up against the planting deadline where they got a pretty good rain. You move up the coast, and the upper coast, they planted 2 to 4 weeks earlier than normal. And so really a lot of that cotton all ended up being about the same age. Phytogen 400 and 480 were the top two performers across all of the monster and race trials last year. And we continue to see really good results with both those varieties again this year. I've seen a lot of harvest go through, and seed cotton weight is looking really good right now. We're really just waiting to get our turnout and quality data back from the gens to understand how those will look. You know, we're also excited those same varieties are going to be in the university trial. So, you know, as soon as we get those results available, I'm looking forward to being able to share those with everybody.
Well, thank you so much. We're about out of time, but I really appreciate your sharing this information with us, and growers can always get more information at www.phytogen.com. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Robin.
Thanks, Robin, and thank you, Brad, for that interview segment. And before we begin our weather discussion with Mike Boylan, there are just a couple of items of interest that we want to take a moment to briefly touch on. First of all, Cotton Incorporated has added a new report titled Prevention of Plastic Contamination When Handling Cotton Modules. You can find that on its producer-directed website, Cotton Cultivated. And this report's providing recommendations to growers, to module handlers, and ginners about the proper handling of round modules from the field to the gin to help prevent plastic contamination. The U.S. cotton industry, as we all know, has a long history of producing contamination-free cotton, and we certainly want to preserve that reputation. You can also find a link to that report in our article on cottongrower.com. And of special interest to growers in the Mid-South and parts of the Southeast and Texas, there's a new joint venture that was announced last week, combining the wholesale and retail business of Agra AFC, the retail business of Greenpoint Ag, and the wholesale agronomy business of Tennessee Farmers Cooperative. This new venture is going to operate under the Greenpoint Ag name, and it will be owned by three parent companies, Alabama Farmers Co-op, Tennessee Farmers Cooperative, and Winfield United. The combined company will be a top 7 wholesale and retail agronomy company with over $1 billion in sales. They will operate 99 retail and wholesale agronomy locations in Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, Tennessee, and Texas, and will service 11 different crops over 28 million acres. This company is going to be based in Decatur, Alabama, with regional offices in Memphis and Laverne, Tennessee. So for growers in those areas, watch for a new name and a new structure for a lot of your farm inputs going into next year. And with that, Frank, I guess it's time to open up the virtual studio to today's special guest. Why don't you go ahead and get him set up?
All right. Well, I want to welcome Mike Boylan to the podcast. He is of Mike's Weather Page Facebook fame. A lot of you who follow hurricanes, I'm sure, are aware of him, but we're going to talk to him a little bit about how that came about. But I just in introducing him, wanted to give kind of my experience. I moved to Florida in 2007, and my first tropical experience was Tropical Storm Faye. And really, other than a lot of rain here in the Orlando area where I lived, it was nothing really. And it was like a decade of silence. And in 2016, Hurricane Matthew came along, and I suddenly got interested in hurricanes again. So, I was poking around trying to get information, and I had a friend on Facebook who shared Mike's Weather Page. So I started following then and have been a fan and a follower ever since. So Mike, welcome to the podcast, and we're glad you joined us.
Yeah, thank you for being a fan. That's pretty cool. But yeah, I love doing these and reaching different audiences, and it's very humbling to know how many different parts of the industries and parts of the world that all tune in. So yeah, thanks. Look forward to chatting.
Good deal. I guess just to get us started, tell us how Mike's Weather Page came about and how it's evolved over the years.
It was 2004. We had Charlie coming towards Tampa Bay, and I was learning a little bit of HTML web design in college, and could not find any information on the internet. And it was I was addicted to spaghetti models and NHC maps, and so I decided to put together a page for me, Mike's Weather Page. And I shared it with friends and family. In every storm, I would find more links and more graphics, and kind of making it that one-stop shop for tropics, and really just shared it with friends and whatnot. And then a couple years later, I bought the domain name, and it's slowly become what it is today. More still, it's kind of like my little website that I love to go to, that everybody else does too.
Yeah, and that the URL for the website is?
It was spaghettymodels.com, or if you're like me and can't spell spaghetti, you can just do Mike's Weather Page. It comes up too. I always seem to mess that one up.
Perfect. So the page has grown substantially over the years. Talk about your Facebook engagement, how many followers you have now?
Yeah, the Facebook, I guess it was 2009 is when I started that. And I remember when we first hit 5,000 fans, and I was so excited about it and made a big deal about it. And now we're up to almost 1 million. My post engagement for just last week was over 11 million actual engaged. And I guess I can't even fathom that. That's like a city. So yeah, the website's half of what I kind of do, and then the Facebook has become a big source of news for people. So I do the Facebook Lives, and I kind of have a whole different audience, I think, that rely on Facebook just as much as the website. And it's kind of a community, people love it. It's very personal. We have a great group. It's like a comfort zone. I always say it's people helping people, and it's become a really fun side of Mike's weather page. I really enjoy it.
Do you find as a big storm comes on, is that where you pick up a big chunk? It was like my experience where I saw a friend share your page.
Oh, for sure.
And
yeah. I have the dedicated diehards. I do go through the winter and we have fun. I take everybody on snow chasing trips but yeah, when the storm's coming, for sure. Not everybody lives on social media, so it really grows. And what I guess over the years, what woke me up is I used to only focus on Florida, and then we had a storm going to the Carolinas, let's say, and I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta keep motivated on that. And then Texas and the Caribbean. So I've learned, depending on where the storm is, obviously the crowd's different. Like when we had Hannah with Texas, it was a whole different group, and obviously Upper Gulf and Isaiah was East Coast. So it's neat because regionally you'll see different parts coming in when there's a storm that you don't normally see.
Do you have a sense of your worldwide presence? Do you know how many followers outside of the U.S.?
I'll do that every now and then. I'll be bored sitting at Chili's and I'll post in there like, hey, where's everybody from? Or, I got a lot of fans in Bermuda. So I'll joke because everybody calls these storms fish storms. And I used to also. And man, you forget, like I'm looking at Paulette, it's heading right towards possibly Bermuda. So there's, we got people in the Azores, little islands all around. A lot of Caribbean fans, and I would, again, I used to be guilty and only worry about Florida, but now that I realize the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico and Barbados, and it's crazy. Yucatan, so yeah, the worldwide stretch is just blows me away. It's very cool how Facebook is connected the weather world.
Well, tell us a little bit about the drunk donkey and how you've embraced that. What's the history behind that? And it's kind of a fun story.
Yeah, it's still fun. I don't even call out who did it. It was harmless. But during Hurricane Florence, I apparently shared a model that was pretty worst case scenario. And the local markets in the Carolinas got wind of it, and they were getting a lot of questions. So meteorologists went on air and they're like, before anybody says anything, some dude down in Florida named Mike is sharing this model. And then she went on to say, any drunk donkey can share a model. That was basically, that's what they hate. I mean, meteorologists hate that one worst case run, and it gets blasted on social media, and then they have to hear it from their fans. So they're like, they didn't know who I was. And that, it happened just yesterday. I had the same deal. Somebody said I was cherry picking models to get clicks. And so anyway, my buddy that does t-shirts that I know, I'm like, hey, whip me up a logo, and we did. And the next day we had a shirt, and now that's our thing. Everybody's Drunk Donkey Nation. It's crazy. I had a share yesterday. Somebody was at Disney, a couple both wearing them, and ABC, our local, Florida fine wine and spirit store, sponsored me now, and Koozie. So it's a weird fit, and it works. I don't know.
Is this sort of like the weather version of Parrot Heads, Mike?
I call it Drunk Donkey Nation. Yeah. and a large percentage of my following are Jimmy Buffett and Kenny Chesney, boating crew, so yeah, that's me. That's my style too. So
perfect.
It's fun.
Well, I know in your defense, I follow you pretty closely and watch a lot of the live broadcast, and you always are giving disclaimers, and I don't take anything you do as hyping. But for cotton growers, when they've got a field of cotton that's open and ready to harvest, I think they appreciate somebody that is willing to look at those models a little further out, because if they've got cotton ready to pick, they'll want to know when they need to go and be happy if it misses them, but be safe, be safe rather than sorry.
Well, that's the one thing I don't try to do, but I guess I've always shared all the possibilities. And that's the one thing that I hear people like, is that they can think for themselves, and, they want to see all possibilities. And every now and then I'll go out on a limb and say what I think when I'm confident. But yeah, that's the number one thing people like. They don't like the hype, and they don't like, they just want to be treated like, hey, just throw it out there, all the possibilities, and we'll decide, and it's worked. It's worked this long.
You said you had an experience with cotton with Hurricane Michael. Just talk a little bit about that.
Yes. Well, we go to Talladega for the NASCAR race every year, and I was tracking Michael. It was actually right behind us. It was the weirdest thing. We stayed at a Walmart, and I remember the radar was literally, the bands of Michael were almost reaching us. But we went to the race, and on the way home we went through Albany, Georgia, and it was north of landfall. But I couldn't believe the amount of cotton fields. I think the one road we takes 441 or something. It's a really stretch there, but just seeing the cotton everywhere, and I remember, and we talked about it before the show, but I posted it because I couldn't believe it. And I couldn't believe the damage that was inland. And again, there's always so much focus on landfall and the beaches and the surge, but they never talk a lot about inland effects. And that storm in particular, the pecan farmers too, and cotton were really devastated. And none of that was ever really shown on the news, but it was my personal experience. So I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, cotton everywhere. It was like, that people that probably didn't expect a Category 3 to be that far north, were devastated. So.
And particularly bad, it was a beautiful crop that year too. So it's amazing what a day of a storm can do to something. So, well, I just, for people that may be new to you, talk a little bit about during a busy storm season, what a day in the life of Mike looks like, and just kind of walk us through what you do on a typical day, say tomorrow.
Okay. Well, let's say I usually, because I'm getting older now, I hate to admit it, I wake up early. I used to be a sleeper earner. But lately I sometimes wake up, my wife goes to work early, so I'll catch the 3:00 advisory in the morning, because there's a couple model runs that run GFS and Euro, and sometimes I'll post. 5:00 advisory comes out for the NHC in the 5 a.m. So I'll start posting it then. Then 6 a.m. we get the 6 Z model runs. And then at 8 o'clock, and then we do a Facebook Live at 9 o'clock. Then by 10, 11, we're done with that. And I'll have to update everything that I missed during my live. And then by noon, there's a whole new crop of models that run the 12Z suite. The Euro runs at 2, so there's like something every 30 minutes to an hour that I don't say look forward to, but I know it's coming, and then if the hurricane hunters are out there flying, I'll check in on that. I read Twitter constantly, because, a big part of what I do is I listen to everybody else, and other forecasters listen to me too, so you see the trends and you see something you might've missed, and you just get a pulse, and I always explain to people, like, it's hard to explain, but like, I feel like I get a pulse with the system when you're connected to it all the time. And if I take a break, if I ever have to take a break for 12 hours, let's say, I feel so lost. So I just like to stay in tune with every model run. Trends are huge. So, it's hard to digest all that unless you're in the moment. And because I watch for trends and I watch for consistency, and you can't do that just looking every, 12 hours. And then I'll usually try to do a Facebook Live at 8 o'clock. Post the 11 o'clock advisory from the NHC, and then I'll try to go to bed. I usually visit the adult beverages from about 10 to 11.
That's great.
And then start all over again.
That's great. A busy day. Before we jump into what's percolating out right there, a couple quick things. Do you have a favorite model? I mean, that may change from year to year. And
it does change. Yeah. The Euro used to be king. Everybody always talks about the Euro. Over the years, the Euro and GFS were the top two. And the last couple of years, the Canadian model used to be made fun of, but it's actually gotten very well. The CMC, which is also the GEM, the same one. I usually look at a blend of models. The UK is a good model. Lately this year, the Icon's a German model I've been finding has been really accurate. So like every year you start to get a feeling of what models, doing better than others. And this year in particular, the Euro started out a little rocky. My theory on that is we've had so many homegrown systems that just kind of popped up. They haven't been your classic Cape Verde style hurricanes that come across the Atlantic. So I'm thinking it's, you have these mesoscale models, they call them. The HWRF and HMON are two intensity models that have been very well this year. And that was the one that I was using to show people Laura could be strong. And unfortunately, it was strong. The Euro and GFS were all over the place. And so it's hard. That's what I mean. It goes back to that daily grind. If you really want to stay in tune with what's happening, it's kind of knowing what all the models are doing. And, it's such a weird, it's just, I sometimes wonder, I'm like, do I really need to spend as much time on it? But then if I don't, like I said, I don't sound like I know what I'm talking about, even though I don't. Half the time I want to sound like I do, at least.
That's a rarity, a weather person who kind of admits that they don't exactly know what's going to happen. Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. And the thing is, every storm I can go back and show a post or a model run that was wrong. And I would never say, I never call anybody out that they're wrong, but weather humbles you. I think that's why everybody likes it, because it's so unpredictable.
Well, and I think that's one of the reasons we wanted to talk to you, because weather plays such a huge part in cotton production, from coast to coast. We're in the cotton belt, and I was looking at your page this morning. So if you don't mind, let's kind of take a look at this current map. We're taping this on September 8th. And right now you've got 3 storms currently in the Atlantic, one of which is off the Carolinas coast that I'm sure there's some growers over in that area that are keeping an eye on, with 2 others still out in the Atlantic. What's going to happen with these?
Well, the closest one to the U.S. is that it's Invest 94. It kind of popped up out of nowhere. It's actually a little bit of remnants we had a storm called Omar. And it's not, NAC is saying we could have a tropical depression by the weekend. So it's coming toward the end of the week. It's a slow mover. I don't expect any sort of rapid intensification, but it's going to be more of a rain event. It doesn't look like it's going to go inland very much, because we have the big news of the week right now is the snow out in Denver. And we have a rare cold front right now happening that's bringing in a ton of snow. Well, that's going to kind of block this from going much inland. So it appears to be more of a coastal rainmaker event before this front comes along and either absorbs it or pushes it back to sea. So we could have a little surprise spin up out of it. We've had that happen all year. Every storm this year, surprisingly, is kind of popped up when it wasn't supposed to. So I'd keep, we could see a little surprise spin up, kind of like we saw with Hannah, Isaiah. So it's, these are the ones you got to watch. I mean, we're not talking about a Laura because it doesn't have the time. A system like Laura needs a good 3, 4, 5 days once it's established. This one's not even established yet. There's no spinach, as I say. So it could be a weaker, tropical system, but it's not going to go inland. So that's good news. The rain looks like it's going to be more of a coastal event, and the front coming is going to at least push it back. It won't hang around much. And then the other systems, because of this weakness in the Atlantic with Omar, that this spawned, the Bermuda high that's typically very, very strong is kind of broke down. So these other 2 systems are curving to the north, Paulette and Renee. So more than likely Paulette will be a Bermuda threat. Doesn't appear any East Coast threat with those. The long range models, a little concerning is there's another wave coming off of Africa that is behind Renee that could make its way into the Caribbean by this time next week. So that's got the eye of a lot of people. We're starting to see model consistency that we could be looking at that Cape Verde style system that, we always get the one or 2 a year that we have to track, long track. And it looks like, and then there's another one after that. And, the peak of season's the 10th. And unfortunately, Africa's got 3 more waves in inland right now. So we've got a busy month ahead of us, unfortunately.
Well, that was my next question. I know it's Atlantic hurricane season, but we've already also seen 3 storms in the Gulf that impacted Texas and up in the Mid-South. What are the chances of seeing another storm or 2 heading in that direction?
Just as good as anywhere else, put it to you that way. Like, some people think it's closed, like the season's closed because we already had a system. There's already some ensembles with this new wave off Africa shoving, through Hispaniola, Cuba, just like the path we saw with Laura. It's all how strong that high pressure system is and timing of fronts. And when we have 3 or 4 waves coming off at the same time, one's going to react to a front, but the next one might not have the same reaction. So the highs are going to come and go, and they're going to build and they're going to close. Since we're going to have 3, 4, 5 more waves possibly that we're going to have to watch, the threat's definitely there. And then really back to your question about the Gulf typically they're more in line for October style systems. And that's because we get these old fronts that hang around and create some spin and low pressure tails of fronts. And these usually get wrapped up. That's where Michael started and come straight up to the Gulf. So unfortunately for the Gulf, they haven't even, escaped any chance yet. The first part of the country that starts to escape, and I've learned this over the years, is actually Texas, because as these fronts come down, these systems typically all start to curve to the east. So Texas is usually the first one you can say starting to have less threats. But as of now, it's unfortunately, we have a lot of memorable October storms, and they don't think this year's going to be any different.
I noted that we're already up to the R's in terms of named storms, and we haven't even peaked of the season yet. What do we do when we run out of names? When we go through the 26 letters of the alphabet?
Well, they've only done it once, and that was I think in 2005. And they go to the Greek alphabet. They go to Alpha, Beta, and then Gamma. They actually have, and Weather Channel today was actually starting to promote that. So they go to the Greek alphabet list, and all the official predictions are we are going to be in the Greek alphabet list.
Well, I can assure you, and Frank will agree too, that we've heard growers come up with their own names for some of these storms, for many times, and and they're certainly more colorful and probably better than what the National Weather Service will give us.
This year was terrible. I mean, I butchered every name. The only one that we didn't get more than a day was Dolly. I was excited about Dolly. She only lasted a day. ECE, it took me 2 weeks to learn how to say it.
And by then it was over with.
Yeah, and I still wanted to say it. I blended Lorenzo and Marco, or I don't know. I butchered a couple other ones. But I back to the Greek thing. It's funny. I just got done talking to my shirt guy, and all my people love our shirts. I'm making our donkey in a Greek toga outfit, and he's going to be on a palm tree with his toga blowing, and we're going to have some funny saying. But because I know we go to the Greek alphabet, that's going to be the story of the year.
Absolutely. Tell us again, remind us where our listeners can find your reports, where they can see your what you have, and maybe more importantly, where they can maybe get their hands on a Drunk Donkey shirt.
Well, I was lucky to get Mike's weather page on everything. So Twitter, all you gotta do is Google Mike's weather page, Instagram, and the website's Mike's weather page, Facebook's Mike's weather page. So it's pretty easy to find. And in the store, I do have a little link right on the very top of my page, and I got an image of the donkey. Can't really miss it. So it's a cool little store, and people share funny pictures with their donkey gear. We even have a face covering donkey mask, which is good because the tongue is positioned just right, so it kind of looks like a drunk donkey.
Very good. Well, Mike, unless you have anything else, I think we can wrap it up now. We really, really appreciate you coming on and telling us your story and all you do to keep everybody informed about the weather.
Well, no, thank you guys. I mean, I have a lot of fun doing this, but it's also, I'm reminded of the people that live through these storms. And even with Laura, we had a fan that messaged me when they were evacuating. And then the day later, she texted me pictures of their house with the roof blown off. And, we tend to forget that people live through this stuff. And like you mentioned, your farmers, the effects. So I'm always learning, I have a good time doing it, but I take it very serious and just so thankful to have some people like yourself enjoy it. And I look forward to having more fans. We can all be part of this together.
That's great, Mike. Thank you so much. Certainly for taking time to join us on Cotton Companion to hopefully is a little different audience for you at this point.
So that pretty much wraps up another episode of the Cotton Companion podcast. Thanks again to Mike Boylan for joining us in the virtual studio today. And thanks to the folks at Phytogen for sponsoring us. And thank you, dear listeners, for joining us again. If you like what you hear at the Cotton Companion, please be sure to spread the word and tell your farmer friends about this podcast. And here's how you do it.
You can find the Cotton Companion in 3 easy ways. First, go to cottongrower.com/companion, or simply click the podcast tab at the top of the homepage. Second, subscribe to our channel on iTunes or wherever you find your podcasts these days. And 3, sign up for our weekly e-newsletter, the Cotton Grower e-News, that's delivered to your email inbox every Tuesday morning. You can do that by going to cottongrower.com/subscribe. Also, be sure to follow Cotton Grower on social media. We are at Cotton Grower Mag on Twitter. And on Facebook, you'll find us by searching for Cotton Grower Magazine.
Okay, and a quick reminder, keep your eyes open for our August-September issue, which should be hitting your mailboxes right about now if you haven't already received it. This podcast is produced by Tyler Hatch and Kim Henderson, our talented colleagues back at the mothership, Meister Media Worldwide in lovely Willoughby, Ohio. My name's Jim Steadman. I'll be back with you in a few weeks for the next episode of the Cotton Companion. So for now, on behalf of my own Cotton Companion, Frank Giles, we wish you all the best and stay safe.
Yeah, he works and he works and he works and he works all day. God made a farmer. Yeah, he works and he works and he works and he works and he works all day. God made a farmer.
Phytogen thanks you for listening to this edition of the Cotton Companion. To learn how you can thrive with Phytogen, go to phytogen.com.